So from the outside, your teen might look like they have it all figured out. They might have good grades, packed schedule, maybe a sport or an instrument that they're excelling at, and maybe even a reputation as the really reliable student or athlete or whatever it might be. But underneath all of that, a lot of high-achieving teens are quietly falling apart. And here's something that might surprise you. Research on adolescents in high-achieving schools has found they can suffer significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and delinquent behaviors, at least 2 to 3 times the national average. And in a study of 9 top-performing private and public schools, students experienced clinically significant elevated symptoms of anxiety and depression at a rate 6 to 7 times national norms. And that's not a small gap. That is an entire group of kids who look successful on paper while struggling in ways that often go unnoticed until something breaks.
Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together.
Hey everyone, and welcome back into the podcast. I cannot believe how fast summer is flying by right now. It just feels like in a blink, it's almost done. And it's so sad because I feel like we wait all year for these moments of a little bit more spaciousness, a little bit more time with our kids, a little bit more time, in some body of water. And then before you know it, it's like, dang it, it's over. And then we're back to the routines of driving kids here and there and just so many activities after school and all the different things. I am just really trying to soak it in right now and take those little moments of connection time, take those moments outside, getting out in nature, getting to the river, getting to the lake, getting to the pool, whatever it might be, so that I can actually soak it in before it's gone. And I hope you all have been having an amazing summer too. So what I want to talk to you today is about something that I see a lot in my coaching work with young people, is that I get a lot of teens who are struggling not with depression or big, huge mental health problems, but really just the juggle of everyday life. So I see a lot of high achieving teens or young adults in college who hold the bar incredibly high for themselves. And I love that about them. I love that they have such amazing goals and that they're willing to put in the work and really do their best to get high grades, to go after all these different achievements and milestones and everything that they're seeking. And I always want to encourage that. And I also find with these high achieving teens that so many of them actually do get so overwhelmed and stressed and sometimes anxious because they're holding the bar so high and they haven't quite learned how to manage all the things on their plate. So sometimes saying yes to too many opportunities, sometimes not organizing themselves well, sometimes procrastinating and then having so much stress leading up to an exam or a paper that's due or anything like that. And so really it's teaching them skills of how to manage the things that they have on their plate, whether that's organizing with a planner, taking care of things right away, blocking off time in their schedule, putting things on their calendar, or really just working with their thoughts and the way that they're thinking about the challenges that are in front of them and the things that are on their plate, which can have a big impact as well. So that's what I want to talk with you all about today, is how can we help our high achieving teens and young adults to have more balance in their lives, to have less stress in their lives, to have less anxiety, and to really be able to go accomplish those big things that they have set out for themselves without creating so much emotional turmoil and friction and angst and meltdown because of it. So from the outside, your teen might look like they have it all figured out. They might have good grades, a packed schedule, maybe a sport or an instrument that they're excelling at, and maybe even a reputation as the really reliable student or athlete or whatever it might be. But underneath all of that, a lot of high achieving teens are quietly falling apart. And here's something that might surprise you. Research on adolescents in high-achieving schools has found they can suffer significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and delinquent behaviors, at least 2 to 3 times the national average. And in a study of 9 top-performing private and public schools, students experienced clinically significant elevated symptoms of anxiety and depression at a rate 6 to 7 times national norms. And that's not a small gap. That is an entire group of kids who look successful on paper while struggling in ways that often go unnoticed until something breaks. So I'm talking about the teen who cries over a B+, the teen who won't turn in an assignment unless it's perfect, even if that means turning it in late or not at all, or the teen who takes one bad test grade and decides that means they're not smart enough, not good enough, or not going to be able to get into the college they've been dreaming about since 8th grade. So today I want to talk about why so many high-achieving teens hold themselves to standards that are impossible to meet and what happens to their confidence every time they fall short of those standards. I'm also going to talk about the power of failure because I know that sounds like a strange thing to celebrate, but it might be the single most important skill your teen can build right now. And I'm offering some real tools, the regulation techniques, and the practical, tangible strategies that actually help teens manage stress instead of getting buried by it. We'll also talk about the role you play as a parent in all of this because there's a version of support that helps and a version that accidentally makes things worse. And most parents don't realize which one they're doing until we break it down. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to start with what's actually happening underneath the surface for a lot of these kids. High-achieving teens often tie their entire sense of self-worth to their achievements. So a bad grade doesn't feel just like a bad grade. It feels like a referendum on who they are as a person. Researchers make a distinction here that I think can be really helpful. What they say is there's a difference between what's called perfectionist strivings, which is setting high personal standards, and then perfectionist concerns, which is the excessive worry over mistakes and the fear of being judged for them. And it's the second one, the concerns piece, that's tied to depression and social anxiety and gifted and high-achieving teens. The high standards themselves are not the problem. It's the fear underneath them. And this is not a small or rare issue. Somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of adolescents are negatively impacted by perfectionism. And a review of 284 different studies connected perfectionism to insomnia, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, social phobia, self-harm, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And that is a long list, and it tells us that this isn't just a personality quirk. It's something with real weight behind it. Part of what feeds this is that high-achieving students are often taught early on to connect their self-worth to being the best, which makes them dependent on outside validation and vulnerable to anxiety the moment they fall short of perfect. And then when you layer that on top of the culture your teen is swimming in every single day, which social media, as we know, is full of good vibes only messaging, which teaches teens that negative emotions aren't acceptable to have in the first place. And so now they're not just afraid of failing, they're afraid of feeling bad about failing. So we want to start noticing when every small failure or missed shot or a lower than expected score or not making a team or anything along those lines becomes evidence in your teen's head that they're failing at life, not just failing at one thing. So if you notice your teen reacting to a small setback like it's a catastrophe, that's usually not about the setback itself. It's a deeper story they're telling themselves about what it means. So what we're seeing here through the research and through what we're just witnessing from our young people is that perfectionism itself is damaging, right? And we want to know, like, what is the alternative? How can we help our young people shift out of this? And so I want to offer a reframe here, and it's one that can change how your teen relates to mistakes. So failure is not the opposite of success. It is the mechanism that gets them there. Every skill your teen has ever built came from a version of them that wasn't good at it yet. The only way through that gap is failing at something enough times to learn what actually works. The teens who build real resilience are the ones who can tolerate failure, adjust, and try again. And the teens who avoid any risk of failure tend to narrow their world down to only the things they already know they're good at. So that might look safe on the surface, but it actually limits how much they grow and it makes the fear worse over time instead of better. One thing that I want to be clear about though is that the goal is not to make your teen stop caring about doing well. It's to help them separate their effort and their growth from any single outcome. So a test score is information. It is not a verdict. So the teens and young adults that I work with who are able to reframe this, who are able to reframe the way that they look at failures or mistakes, those are the ones that start propelling at a really rapid rate. Because now all of a sudden, they don't have to hold themselves back from things that might be challenging or that they're not going to be perfect at the first time. They can go after those really challenging experiences, those hard exams or that next internship or whatever it is, even if they don't know how to do it, because they know that even if they mess up, they're going to get information. And from that information, they're going to be able to grow and change and evolve and get to the next level. And so they really see those failures and those mistakes as a staircase, really, right? If they can just continue to take those steps forward, they know through repetition, through grit, through perseverance, through resilience, they will actually become that version of themselves that they're striving for. They're going to actually get to that perfection in whatever area that is that they're trying to achieve, whether that's that perfect grade or figuring out that task or that project or any goal that they have, right? If they understand that it's going to take falling down, messing up, getting back up, even being embarrassed sometimes, if they know that's part of the process and not something to avoid, then they look at the whole experience differently, right? And so really giving them that understanding and those tools for how do we get ourselves back up once we fall down? How do we reframe it? How do we tell ourselves a different story about what just happened, right? Those are the kinds of things that are going to help them not take failure as this catastrophe that ends all of life, because basically their brain is telling them that if they go out and fail at this thing, they're going to die. Right? That's the level that our brain goes to with anything that feels uncertain or unfamiliar or scary. Our brain will try to talk us out of it because it wants us to stay safe. It wants us to stay comfortable. And so the teens that learn that, hey, if I stay safe and comfortable, I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to actually achieve the things I want. Those are the ones that can actually keep going and accomplishing and succeeding and making it to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. So that is a reframe that can be so powerful for them. And then one of the most influential things you can do as a parent is model this yourself. So tell your teen about a time you failed at something and what you learned from it. Let them see that you don't have it all figured out either, and that you kept going anyway. Or you can even give examples of lots of other people out in the world that have told their stories about how many thousands of times they had to fail at something. There's so many famous people examples of this, whether it be Michael Jordan or Benjamin Franklin or Albert Einstein or whoever. I mean, so many different people, and there's lots of really current ones that they could relate to even better that you can pull out as well. That anyone who's reached success has only done it through mistake after mistake and through resilience and getting back up and persevering, and they can do it too. So kids really learn more from watching how we handle our own mistakes and how other people handle their mistakes than from anything we tell them directly. And so be that example for them. Show them what happens when you mess up and how you get back up and how you brush yourself off and you get after it again. The other thing that is really important for our high achieving teens is that they have tools for managing stress and anxiety. And so that's just practical. They actually do need some skills in this area because these aren't things that they just get on their own if they haven't been taught. And so let's just start with a few regulation techniques that you can share with them or that you can even model for them. When your teen is spiraling, the first step is helping them name what they're feeling before trying to fix anything. So just saying, I'm anxious about this test, instead of sitting in a vague cloud of dread, lowers the intensity of the feeling. It sounds really simple, but it works. What's happening here is that when we name an emotion, it lowers our amygdala activity. So the amygdala is the part of the brain that serves as the guard. It's looking out for threats and danger and things like that. And when we sense a threat or we sense something that's scary, we go into that stress response, that fight, flight, freeze response. And so our adrenaline starts pumping, our heart starts beating faster. We might start having short and shallow breath, lots of different physical symptoms that might be happening. We're in this stress response. We're feeling super anxious. We're feeling scared. We're feeling this heightened state of alarm. And part of that is because our amygdala doesn't know what's going on. It's scared about something. But when we actually name an emotion, it lowers that amygdala activity because now it's not unknown. It's not as scary. I'm feeling anxious. So now it's something that we can categorize. And so that alone can really help to lower that stress response. Also, simple breathing techniques are really worth teaching too. So something quick enough that they'll actually use before a test or a big moment. It does not need to be complicated. A few slow breaths before walking into a room can shift the whole nervous system. One simple breathing technique that I always teach teens is box breathing. And you probably have heard of this before, but box breathing is simply breathing in for a count of 4, holding your breath for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 4, and then holding for a count of 4. And 4 rounds of box breathing really can de-escalate the whole system and re-regulate. So all of a sudden, instead of being in that heightened state of stress, it sends that message up to your brain that everything's okay, I'm not about to die. And it lowers the whole situation. And so now your nervous system can feel a lot more regulated and you can go in with your integrated brain again instead of your prefrontal cortex being offline and unable to help you with the regulation or with the problem solving or the critical thinking you're going to need in that moment. It's also really helpful to build a wind down routine at night. Their brain and body need a chance to come down off the day before they try to sleep. So screens right up until the moment they close their eyes works against that. So even 10 minutes of quiet before bed makes a difference, or reading a book or pulling out their journal and just brain dumping how their day went or different wins they had or things they're feeling grateful for, anything along those lines, or even just listening to some calming music can be really helpful. Having a hot cup of bedtime tea, getting into some good routines that help to wind the system down, that their body knows, oh, it's bedtime, I'm about to go to sleep. That can be really helpful too. And then for some practical, tangible tools, breaking big projects into smaller tasks makes the whole thing feel far less overwhelming. So a 10-page paper feels impossible. But doing an outline in one session and then 3 pages in another session and then 3 more another day can feel a lot more doable. So really chunking things down and reminding yourself that I don't have to do this whole paper right now. I just need to do the outline right now. That's huge. Another thing that's really important is for them to spread work out over several days instead of cramming everything into one long, stressful night. Procrastination is rarely about laziness. It's usually anxiety about starting. So if the task feels too big or too scary, avoiding it feels safer in the moment, even though it makes things worse later. So procrastination is one of the things that I see most often that really, really creates all of that extra anxiety and stress because they're still holding that bar up high for themselves. They still are planning on getting that A, but they started studying at midnight for their 10 a.m. test the next day. And so they're going to be up all night and they're going to be cramming and they're going to be worried about it and they're not going to be as effective. And so then they might not actually get that score that they want, or maybe they do, but it creates so much stress and anxiety and angst and meltdowns in the process that are so unnecessary. So just helping them to learn how to manage their time and how to break things into smaller chunks can really help them to not put things off so often and get into some better habits around taking care of things right away. Basic organizational systems really help too. So whether that's a planner or a calendar or color-coded folders so that your teen isn't carrying every deadline around all the time in their head. And then also just having a clean, dedicated workspace. Clutter adds a low level of stress that most teens don't even realize is affecting them until it's gone. And so if they have an organized space, if they're able to track assignments and block time off on their calendar for certain tasks and things like that, they are setting themselves up for so much more success, so much less stress, so much less anxiety, and so much more guaranteed outcomes that they actually want for themselves. So the next thing I want to talk about is the importance of celebrating wins and shifting their self-talk. So something that I see constantly with high achieving teens is that they are excellent at pointing out everything they did wrong and terrible at acknowledging what they did right. So one tool that helps is having them keep a simple running list of wins, even small ones. And what this does is it builds evidence against their own inner critic over time. So when that critic shows up, they have something real to counter it with. One thing I see so often is that high achieving teens are their own toughest critic and their own biggest bully. And neither of those are helpful. They have to shift the narrative in their head, in their thoughts. If they are constantly beating themselves up, constantly calling themselves names, constantly comparing themselves to other people, what that does is it creates this landscape inside that does not improve their confidence. What it does is it creates more stress, more overwhelm, and it makes it harder for them to do the things that they want to do. And so having kind, compassionate self-talk, celebrating their wins, congratulating themselves, pausing after an achievement before they just go on to the next goal. All of these things are so important. So really, really changing the climate inside their head is such a big piece of changing the way they feel about everything that they're working on. And we can really reinforce this by the ways that we notice and celebrate their wins as well. Not just the wins, right? So not just when they get that perfect score on that test, but also the effort that they put into it, the way they bounced back, the way they got back up after they didn't have a good grade last time, the way they asked for help. We want to really point out all of those positives and celebrate those things with them so that that can really reinforce the fact that, hey, you're doing some amazing things right now. I'm so proud of you for that. You are so amazing. You have so much going for you. Great job. We want to reinforce all of that positive self-talk as well. There are two ways parents tend to get this wrong, and they're actually opposites of each other. The first is over-rescuing. So that's when we're stepping in to fix every problem. We email their teacher. We redo their project. We smooth every rough edge before they even ask if we can. And it comes from love. We want to support them in their success. But what it does is it teaches our teens that they can't handle hard things on their own and that we don't trust them to handle it. And then the second way we get it wrong is under supporting. And that's where we assume our teen should just figure it out alone because they're the smart one. But even high achieving teens need a parent to sit down next to them and work through a hard math problem together. It's not that we're doing it for them, but we're present for it. We're helping them navigate it. We're asking them to think about it in a different way or presenting another option. And so having that high support is so huge. David Yeager talks about this so much in his book, 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People. He talks about how the best way that we can support our teens is by having high expectations, but also high support. So we definitely want to help hold that bar high for our kids, but we also need to meet that expectation with the high support that they need. So again, it's not over rescuing and it's not doing it for them, but it is being there and supporting them and cheering them on and being ready to sit down at the table when they need that extra boost. All right, and the last piece I want to talk about is that many high achieving teens are juggling more commitments than any adult would willingly take on themselves, and nobody has ever sat down with them to ask if all of it is actually necessary. So try this exercise together. List every commitment your teen has right now. Then sort them into 3 categories: what they really love doing, what they feel obligated to do, and what they'd drop in a heartbeat if given permission. And then give them that permission. Sometimes the most supportive thing you can say as a parent is you don't have to do it all. Sometimes the expectations are so high and it's not even what they want to be doing. It's one thing for them to be trying to achieve things that really, really matter to them. But what if it's that they're just checking off boxes that other people think are important and it's not even something that they want for themselves? How can we pare it down? How can we really analyze it to find the most meaningful areas for them to put their time and energy into, and really tying it to their ideal selves and what they really want for themselves? Does this line up with the ultimate career you want, or the college that you want to get into, or business that you want to build, or the passions that you think are the most important and most exciting? Because if they're just doing things because other people are doing it or because their advisor told them that they should, but they don't want to do it, some of those things can get eliminated and should get eliminated. We can only juggle so much. We only have so much time in a day. And we also want our young people to be able to be young and have fun and be a kid and go out to the lake with friends and play a video game or do whatever it is that, kids do before they're totally launched into the adult world of responsibilities 24/7. Their teenage years should not just be hitting the books all day long and then going to work and then going to the volunteer thing and then, doing the internship and all of those things. They need to have spaciousness to even find out what it is that they do want for themselves, to sit by a tree and, be in nature, or to go swimming in the lake. So what are some things that could be taken off their plate if they are legitimately overwhelmed and too busy? Doing 3 things well often serves your teen far better than doing 6 things at a mediocre, exhausted level. Fewer commitments done with real presence beats a packed schedule done on fumes. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into our wrap up here. So if you take one thing away from this episode, I hope that you take this. Your high achieving teen doesn't need to be perfect to be successful, and they don't need to carry everything at once to prove they're capable. We talked about how the pressure teens put on themselves often comes from tying their whole identity to their achievements, and how that makes every small failure feel enormous. We talked about failure not as something to avoid, but as the actual mechanism that builds the resilience and skill your teen needs to keep growing. We also covered real tools they can use when the stress hits, from regulation techniques in the moment to practical systems like breaking tasks down, spreading work out, and keeping an organized space. We talked about the importance of celebrating wins and helping your teen become their own biggest cheerleader instead of their own worst critic. We talked about your role as a parent and how the sweet spot isn't rescuing them from every hard moment or stepping back and hoping they figure it out all alone. It's sitting down next to them with high support and high expectations at the same time. And we talked about the power of taking a few things off their plate so they have room to actually thrive in what remains. Your teen is capable of so much. Sometimes the most supportive thing you can do is help them believe that capability doesn't depend on getting everything right. So, once again, it's just like our kids, some of them just come in with so much drive and so much desire to excel. And it's not something that I want to squash. I want to support a high achieving teen and going after all of those big, amazing goals that they have. But we want to do it in a sustainable way, in a way that lifts them up, that makes them feel confident in what they're achieving, instead of makes them constantly feel like they're not good enough or they'll never measure up, or that they're always on this spiral of pressure and failing and stress and anxiety. That is not a life we want for them. We want them to be able to experience the fullness of their young years, to be able to have some balance, to be able to have some fun while they're working towards their goals. So incorporating some of the tools and ideas that we talked about can really help. And sometimes, these high achieving teens can really, really benefit from getting some coaching support as well. Because if your teens are anything like my teens, they have a hard time receiving information from their parents. So all of your well-meaning efforts, all of your amazing advice and wisdom, it falls on deaf ears and they're not able to receive it. And so if your teen needs some more support, but your support isn't the right support in this moment, reach out. I love working with high achieving teens because they are so motivated. They're so driven, right? They are so coachable. Once they have some tools to manage all of these things, it's like they can really take it to the next level in their life, and they can feel good in the process and feel good about themselves. So reach out if you'd like to get some support. You can always book a free call with me to talk about what that might look like. You can also shoot me a DM on Instagram at jasmine.guidedpassages, or you can email me. I'm at jasmine@guided-passages.com. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being the kind of parents that seek out this kind of information so that you can really show up for your teen in the best way possible. I know that they are so fortunate to have you in their corner. So keep going. You're doing amazing. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations, and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.